Hey guys, today we tie a little frog pattern from deer hair, frog legs and some chocolate filler flesh, so not really difficult. We start with the base layer of thread. I just started tying with deer hair recently and it is not that difficult as all the people say it is, but there are some tricks you can do to make it even a bit easier. So I've fucked up my first two flies because due to stacking problems and cutting problems. But first thing is I would always go for a little thread base and secure it with some super glue. I know you have to turn the deer hair around the hook shank, but still it is easily doable like that. But once you tied it in, it's not moving anymore on the blank hook shank, and that makes it a bit easier. So we take off the remaining super glue, and then we tie in just at the rear some of these chocolate filler flesh, just as a little highlight. And then we lay the frog legs on top of it. Just to have a little bit of sparkle on the fly. Like that. Tie it down. Cut it. And then we tie in the frog legs, these here. Don't know the brand name of them right now, but can look it up and put it in the description. So we tie them in just in front of the filler flesh, which is lifting the legs just a little bit up. Just make sure you tie them in straight. So you don't want to have them moving around later on the hook. So what I do now is turning the hook around, and then we apply a little bit of the super glue on the other side. Just to keep it in position. Like that. And fold this little piece backwards here. It's sticking already in the glue, so I just can tie on top of it. And what I like when I tie with deer hair, what I found out, to build a little dam here where I can push the deer hair against it, so it's tightly packed. So we're building up a little thread dam here. And then we can really stick it against it, and it's not moving much. That's good. So we secure this little thread dam with a bit of super glue as well. Like that. And then we can tie the deer hair. So with deer hair, the best thing is to do when you buy it, to check the hair yourself. And of course there's different quality in deer hairs. It's always with natural products, the quality varies. I found out already that the colors, as with the bucktail, white and black, are the most difficult to get in a good quality. But what you want to look out for is that you have long fibers. You don't need them actually super long when you cut them, but it makes just the handling of the fibers much easier. And if you have thicker, longer fibers, you can pack them just nicer. So what we do here, we cut a decent amount of the chartreuse deer hair, and we cut off the tips, because this we want to spin around the hook shank and then have it on the other side, and I don't need any. I don't need any tips pointing backwards there. So when you pull it around, you just lay the thread around it, and then you just lock it with your finger here on top, and then it's kind of tight. And what we want to do now is we secure the top bit with a little bit of super glue as well, just to keep it from turning. And then we tie some more of the chartreuse one on top as well. So make sure you always cut really thick amounts off, and always make sure you remove the underfur. Just, you don't really need it in the clump, and if you don't have it between, it makes the stacking just easier. So just tie in the tips like that. And always kind of move the thread through all the deer hair, because if you do that, it's not catching too many hairs. And if you just go straight through and you catch all the hairs, your thread is lying quite high in the material. And what can happen then, if it's lying quite high and you cut it later on with a razor blade, is you fuck up your thread. You just cut it, and then you have to start from the beginning again. So this is just the first layer, and pull all thread out. Just make sure you're not trapping too many of these fibers, and just go a little bit around on the hook shank to secure the thread outside. And you can just work it backwards, and I like it here to keep the thread really close to the hook shank, kind of the bobbin is touching the hook shank, and then I can go all the way in it where I stopped tying deer hair, because when you start tying in here, the next bundle in here, just at the place where you stopped it, you can just pack it and stack it easily. So I always take quite huge amounts of deer hair. This is probably the thickness of 2 pencils. It's just easier to stack it properly when you use more material, and it's not that super expensive material, so we can just waste a little bit of it as well. So we just lay it in here, maybe 30-degree angle, spin the thread counterclockwise, so I can work it around, pull it tight a bit, go in a second wrap around it, and then we spin it around, keep it locked there with the finger on the bottom area. Then we work the thread once more through the hair and pull it tight. I'm using a gel spun thread here. A stronger thread, of course, is easier as the pulling of the deer hair, but if you pull too hard, you will just cut it. So you have to find the right way between it. And some people do use a 200 denier thread, but I like to use these 50 denier thread, is it? It's just a little bit thinner, and it gives me more space for stacking. Because if I use a thick thread, I'm just moving faster up front and filling up the material, or the place on the hook just quicker. So we tie in some of olive deer hair now. Decent amount as well. Cut off the tips, we don't need them anymore. We had the tips here at the end. It was just giving us a nicer taper, but you don't need any more. And then we just lie it on top of it. I always spin the thread counterclockwise just to keep it close to the position where I want to tie, and work the thread through the material. Hold the material with your fingers in place and just pull it tight. And now the trick is to squeeze just a little bit of material in between here, so we can decide what we do. Just fill it up with a little bit of olive, because I just want to have a little pattern in the front of the fly. So just put a little bunch, maybe 1 pencil thick, again in the middle of it, just to stack it nicely, and then we can pack it later. Always remember to remove the underfur. And this time I just lay it on top where I tied it in. I spread it a little bit. Just spread it with my thumb. Hold it in position, so it's just moving to the sides, like that. And then I put a little bit of chartreuse in the middle as well. Just think it could look nice. Not much, just a little bit of chartreuse, which I'll lie in the middle, giving us a nice shape later. Just work the thread through the material as always, and then we'll have a small round chartreuse spot there. So we work the material back. We build it up, the thread dam in the beginning, so we can just push the material against it without having any fear of ruin our fly. So we work the thread again through the material up the front, nearly like when you tie in bucktail, move it out straight, go a few turns around the hook, and then a few turns back to lock the thread, and then we can actually see what we want to do. And what we want to do, bring it all the way back to the beginning, like that. Push it in, get it really, really tight. And if you find a good way to grab these fibers, just pull them back and tie a thread in here, all the way back. Then we do the same procedure again. We take big clumps of the green chartreuse deer hair, cut the tips off, and remove the fibers. You can also brush it with the comb or with a cat brush, easy as that. And then we take it on the right hand, fold the fibers back and lay it against that. Spin the bobbin counterclockwise. One loose wrap, pull it a bit tight, and then go with a stronger second wrap and turn it around the hook to the bottom side where we want to have it. Apply a little bit of super glue on the top again, just to make make it last a bit longer. I mean, I want to fish this pattern here for pikes in Sweden. Therefore, a little bit of super glue is definitely quite a good idea. And then we start to tie an olive again on the top. Cut the tips off. Move it in the hand. You should be able to move deer hands around in your hand quite often. And still keep it in place. There's no need of stacking here the deer hair, because we kind of cut all the material later anyway. Stacking deer hair I usually only use for tying dry flies, where you want to have the wing all in one length, but it's not really that important for a frog pattern. So we push it down with our thumb and just work the material in here. And then work the thread around it and work the material in it. So the thread is lying really close to the bottom, and then we can slowly start working our chartreuse spot in it again. Remove the fur as always on the fur. Got to cut the tips, so you see that you should be able to move it around your fingers easily, and then just lay it on top flat. Work the thread through the material, spread it a bit, push it down with the thumb and tie it down. Always take at least 2 thread wraps through the material. And now we just go for a little bit color. Take a little bit of orange. Cut the tips. As smaller the amounts you cut, as easier they are to process. But as more you have to tie in, and then it takes you ages. And it's already taking you quite a long time, these flies. So we tie in these chartreuse one, we tie an orange circle like that. Work the material once more through it, and then work the fibers back. And you can use a hair stacker or packer or what it's called, and just push them back with it, but you can do it with the fingers easily as well. I bought me a stacker, never used it so far, but so I can't really tell the difference, but it's just working fine without one, just with the hands. Work the thread all the way back to the last point of our deer hair. By the way, make sure you use belly deer hair. Just rises and turns nicely around the hook. So same thing as the last steps before. Take around 2 pencil thick clump of the chartreuse for the belly. Stack the hair back. Just use as much pressure you can put onto, as more is better. Try to work the thread up front again, like that. We have to see how much space we still got here. if you can easily tie around it like that, it's too much space. Then we have to put on another layer, and we just go for a little bit of chartreuse and for the belly and olive for the top. So this time we don't have to use these big clumps because it's nearly packed all the way to the end, to the hook eye. I mean, maybe you can see that here. I'll try to pull it back a bit. I don't know if you can see that. Probably can turn it a bit. So it's nearly all the way packed to the hook eye. We can still fit one more layer in there. So cut around 1 pencil thickness, remove the fur. You see, you have to be able to move it around with your fingers and fingers and fingers, and shouldn't lose it while doing that. Otherwise you can't tie with deer hair. So this time we fold it back. Let's see if we can get it in there. It's always a little bit tricky. That again. Put that a little bit more back. A little bit more space here. And probably have to move the thread a little bit further back as well. Let's try it like that. I just tied my hook eye is still visible. That's good. We take a little bit less than a pencil. It's just, you'll feel it, and when you tie a few of these, you'll feel how much you will need, how much you can tie in front. So this might be the right amount here. We'll see. Down like that. Try to pull it back. So the hard fly is always to finish these flies off. Because now we don't have any space really left for tying or making a whip finish. But what I like to do is I try to turn it to show it to you. So when you want to put some glue on it to secure it even better, it's hard to get it just onto the hook eye. So what I do, I put some glue on my thread, just enough to secure it, and then I move my hair back again with my fingers. Now trying to touch the glue, give it a counterclockwise spin, and then lay it around the hook eye and pull it tight. Then I pull the glue into it, and that's it, and then I can cut my thread and it should be secured. Like that. So now we come to the cutting part, which can be quite a mess as well. We start cutting it flat on the bottom, on the belly. Just how you do it. Just work through the material a little bit to get all the fibers, raise up maybe a few trapped, and you can get them free before we cut them in the wrong position, because that's always the worst thing that can happen. And let me see how sharp this razor blade here is. Maybe take a new razor blade. So I've got a new razor blade here. You can buy them at Amazon. I think 100 for €8. I think Astra is the name. So what you want to do is you want to have this right in a straight position. So and just loosen it a bit so I can get it into a straight position. Like that. It's looking good. I'll take my razor blade and just go straight from the hook eye through the body. And don't cut too deep with the first cut. Rather take 1 or 2 cuts more before you ruin your whole fly. But you want to have your belly flat to stable the position on the water. And as further down you cut, the better and denser the material gets. Just bend it a bit to cut the edges, like on the edge here, on the right and the left. And we move the fly around. And what we do now, we go in a 45-degree angle with a straight blade from the hook eye upwards into the material, like that. And we do the same, just on the side of the material, go in a 45-degree angle just away from the hook eye. We do the same on the other side. The trick is that if you always cut in 45-degree angles, or in around 45-degree angles, you don't have to, you always cut the edges and then at the end it will be round. At least that's the plan. Like that, and then we can bend our razor blade a little bit. Work it into the material. Like that. do a little bit more cutting later. And then this here, we just cut it in an angle backwards, downward. Like that. And now we can see if we get the head a little bit nicer and smoother. The cutting always takes a little bit of time. It's just what needs to be done for the fly. Like that, and then we have a nice little Dahlberg Diver. Just move the little hairs out, which are still stuck there, before we glue them. So like that. What we want to do now is we work some of the UV glue in it. Work a decent amount of glue in there. Which gives it a lot of stability on the water. Makes it nice. Let it surf through the currents. Oh. And you can do it with your fingers as well. I'll just do it with my dubbing needle. And when everything is worked in, happy with the result, just hit the torch. This one is the Gulf torch here as well. It's right on 365 nanometers, and I had a cheaper one before, I think a Buckbond UV light, and it just doesn't cure the resin really well. It's you do need a professional light which hits it right on 365 nanometers, otherwise there's no sense in having this light. And this one is just tight immediately. And we do put a little bit of super glue here on the collar as well. Not super glue, but UV glue, just to make sure that this is stable and pushes a lot of water when the front of the frog is diving. Last chance to move it into position. We do it step by step. And then everything is secure. We have a little dark spot here, a little orange spot here, some nice camouflage taper of the olive in the chartreuse. And then we put some eyes on it. I found some really cool ones. Yeah, we glue the eyes with some E6000. So glue the eyes on one by one. When you have it on, you want to push it tight for a couple of seconds, so it's really going into the material. and not lying flat on top of it. I'll just fast forward that in the video, but just so you know. Like that, and then we have our finished frog.